Hey there, I'm Kim Sorges with Not Consume Ministries, and today we are going to have a curriculum spotlight featuring To Every Nation. If you're not familiar with this program, I cannot wait to tell you all about it. I'm going to tell you why I created it, the benefits for your homeschool, and actually how it can save you money and time as a homeschooler. So let's get started. All right, so the story. If you've ever been to a homeschool conference and you've ever seen the YWAM Christian Heroes Then and Now booth, you'll know what I mean when I tell you this story. So it was many, many years ago. I think my kids were all under 7 or 8 years old at that time. And I was in a homeschool conference, and there was this huge line at this booth where everybody was buying these. And I remember going over there and thinking, well, if everyone else is buying them, there must be something really cool about these things, right? You know, because we're all about peer pressure as homeschool moms sometimes. We're like, if this family likes it, maybe it'll work for me. Be careful with that trap, but sometimes it does. So here's the funny part, and you've probably done this too. I bought a huge stack of books, actually, much like this. And because they were sold in sets, and I love them. I got so excited about going home and sharing missionary stories with my kids and reading them and cuddling on the couch. And do you know what we did with them? I think you do. Because I know you've done this too. We put them on the shelf and we didn't do anything with them at all. Didn't get to them that year. I'm not even sure we got to them the next year, actually. They just sat there because we were busy and they weren't a part of the curriculum. They weren't a regular thing we were doing, and so we just never got around to it. And then one day we picked up George Mueller. Actually, we picked up Jim Elliot. That was the first one we read. And I decided this is going to be our read aloud, and I have to be really honest because I think there are probably some other people out there that are much like me. And I just thought, okay, so I'm not really sure I'm going to like reading this. And I want to teach my kids things. I don't know if you've ever felt this way, but sometimes I want to teach my kids things and I want them to learn things, but those things are not as interesting to me. I love science and I actually really love history, but biographies are something that I never really got into. And I thought, I don't know if I'm going to like this. This might be a little boring, but I'm going to try it because everybody else thinks it's awesome, right? And so I'm going to do it. So we got out Jim Elliot and we sat down on the couch, and I remember my boys at the time would have been 4 and 7. And we finished the whole book that night. This whole book that night, because it is super, super interesting. And we couldn't put it down. And my boys were like, no, we can't go to bed. We have to read more. Tell us the rest. And so thus began our love, and I do say absolute love, for particularly the Christian Heroes Then and Now series. If you're not familiar with that series, by the way, I think they have somewhere between 40 and 50 books that are written about various mostly missionaries. Some of them are people who have made a great impact on the faith, like maybe Corrie ten Boom, for example, who you could actually say was maybe a missionary too. Some were intentionally, like Jim Elliot, went on the mission field. Others just ended up living the life due to circumstances, like Corrie ten Boom, right? There are also some history heroes, like some of the presidents and stuff like that. Anyway, that's what the series is about. So we loved them so much that we decided to incorporate them into our homeschool year. And I started writing a little curriculum as we went throughout the year. And that's how To Every Nation was born. It was out of my desire to read these books with my kids and then have just a little bit more to go along with that. And let me tell you why missionary studies are so awesome, in my opinion. First, there's the historical aspect. In all of these books, not only are you learning, this is a great example actually, not only are you learning about Corrie and her life, and you're learning about God and how to trust God, like really trust God in the hard moments. We'll get back to that in a minute. But you're also learning the history along with it. So we learned a lot about the Holocaust through this book, so much so that my kids pursued other books and other things. And when we listened to, we love Brinkman Adventures. If you're not familiar with those, go look them up when you finish this video. Awesome audio dramas that are modern, more of a modern day missionary story. They have a new one called Underground or something. That escapes me. Sorry. They have one of their newest CDs is on the is a story. It's a modern day story of these missionary kids who go, I think it's their grandma, great grandma, something like that, probably great grandma, and they go and they visit, and she's telling them a story about another perspective during the Holocaust. And so we had some awesome conversations in our family after listening to that CD about Corrie ten Boom and how the ten Boom family would have, like, how that would have gone parallel to the story that we heard, which was also a true story. So really cool stuff, and really lasting stuff because it's done in a meaningful story way compared to other kinds of history. Sometimes we make it into these facts and stuff, and it shouldn't be like that. It should be something that's like, wow, that really happened. This is so neat. We've also learned about the Boxer Rebellion and all kinds of different, especially Chinese. We've done a lot of Chinese missionaries. We've learned a lot of Chinese history and a lot of those issues that occurred over there. So, okay. So anyway, we basically, out of wanting to hear these and wanting to do more, I started writing it down, and this is kind of how it goes. Let's see. Each one of these studies, oh wait, let me back up. One more thing. I mentioned that in these stories, you get to hear how to really trust God, and it gives your kids those practical ways. But also, I think that the value of this comes in compassion for other people and their situations, because sometimes it's really hard to have compassion for that situation if you don't really understand it. And also just helping us as parents to be able to illustrate how God actually works in situations. Because the cool thing is sometimes we do see we don't get the whole picture of how God works. A good example of that would be Jim Elliot, for example, who died while trying to minister to missionaries. And sometimes we have things in our life that we think, wow, God, why did you let that happen? And how could that be good? How could that end up good? Well, if you don't know Jim Elliot's story, I hate to ruin it for you, but he did die trying to witness to a very hostile tribe. And not only him, but other men died with him. Men who all had families died. However, the tribe, the very hostile tribe, ended up, through that experience, opening up their doors so that they could actually come in, and Jim Elliot's wife, Elizabeth Elliot, and Rachel Strait, and some other people, Rachel Saint, I think I said Strait, sorry. Rachel Saint, and some other people were able to go into this tribe and not only witness to them, but the entire tribe came to Christ. They were able to live with them for many years and translate a Bible into their language. Super cool stuff, right? So nothing in our life is wasted. And it's such a neat thing to be able to use stories like this to show our kids when they're going through something hard and they think, how could this be good for me? How is this good? How is it, good that I can't get along with my sister or brother? Or how is it good that our friend is, has cancer? Or, you name it. There are so many things. The other really cool, I'll share one more really impactful lesson that we've had in our family from reading these stories. And that was George Mueller, if you haven't read that one. Because George's story is one of incredible hardship. He had a lot of plans and a lot of things he wanted to do in his life, and he really wanted to go overseas to be a missionary, and God did not provide that opportunity for him. Instead, he ended up staying in the country that he lived in, and then he opened many, many orphanages and saved millions, not millions, thousands of orphans as a result of his efforts. And one story that we read in that book is a pretty well-known story where George and all of his orphans, the workers, hundreds of people are literally sitting in the dining hall, and it's breakfast and there's no food and there's nothing to drink. There's nothing. And they all come to breakfast anyway, and they all sit down, and George just says, we're going to thank the Lord for the food that he is going to provide. And I remember the intense moment was like, is he going to provide? Like, what is going to happen to these kids? Are they going to be okay? And as they're sitting at the table praying and thanking God for this food that they don't have, people knock on the door and, end up providing the full meal, everything that they need. And that's it was just such an impactful thing for my kids to see, and long lasting. No, we have never, ever sat down at the table and literally had absolutely nothing to eat. But we have seen God provide in so many ways. And we have had moments when we've had to trust him. So it's really cool to do that. Okay, so that's the pitch for studying missionaries. Now, let me show you our way of doing that and how this study is laid out for you. First, we study 12 missionaries in this version of To Every Nation. And these are the ones: Hudson Taylor, Gladys, Eric Corey ten Boom, George Mueller, Nate Saint, Elizabeth Elliot, David Livingstone, Mary Slessor, Amy Carmichael, and William Carey, and Adoniram Judson. So that is who is included in this study. And for each missionary, what you have is as follows. There's a little how to use this part of the book. And then we have a 2-page, I'll see if I can show that to you there, 2-page biography of the missionary. So this is the most common question we get about this, is how do we use the 2-page biography with these books? Like, how does that mesh? So for us, what we did was we read the entire we read this as a family. So we would sit down, read aloud. We would just read the book. And then we read the biography that was in here as a review and kind of highlighted points that we really thought were valuable and, wanted to use on the rest of the pages in here. As my kids, I know one of the things I have suggested for people to do is to have an older child read these. Either out loud, or if you're just hoping to extend it for a middle schooler or so, you can have them read this, and then the rest of your family can come together once they finish this and work on the book together or whatever. There are all kinds of different ways to do it. So you can actually do this entire study without this book at all, and a lot of people do that. So just for reference, in case you've never seen inside these, the print is actually pretty large, and the books are not super long. They're 180 pages or so. So it's a pretty good read for upper elementary, definitely middle school. It's not hard. They are written for kids. Unlike other missionary biographies, these are written for kids, but they're not dummied down in a way that they are not going to get lots of good stuff out of them. So that's one reason why we really love them. Okay, so there's the missionary. Okay, and you might have noticed here at the bottom we have Hudson Taylor, and then on the bottom we have a character trait that we're pulling out for each missionary, and each missionary has a different character trait. And we take that character trait and we actually use it later in the study of this missionary. So that's going to come in handy here in just a second. The next page is actually an information sheet, and this is the sheet that we use to fill out where they were born, what country they're from, when they lived, write a little bit about their struggles, interesting facts, and then something specific that you saw God do in their life would be here, okay? Then on this side, you study a little bit about the country that the missionary is from and or the country they went to. So it kind of depends which one we picked. And then some facts about that people group and stuff like that. This is intended to be more of a modern day study, not necessarily a what it was like back then. But you could do it either way if you chose to. Then there is a timeline page. Now this is the only page that some people like to use as they're going through the book. If they see an important date, I don't know why I keep pulling that up upside down, sorry. If you're reading and you see an important date, you can go ahead and pull out and write that here. So that will be fine. And then after the timeline, by the way, sometimes we, especially if you have young ones, we like to draw on here and not just write facts and information. So keep that in mind for that too. We kind of left plenty of space to do that. The next page is actually the Bible study. Remember I mentioned the character trait? So the Bible study page that we have for each missionary is based on that character trait that we saw in their lives. Now, obviously some missionaries, endurance is one that a lot of missionaries had, but we try to really focus in on something that is unique to their story as much as possible. For example, Corrie ten Boom, we did forgiveness because she had to face later in her life, if you don't know her story, forgiving the man who arrested her family or not arrested her family. I think it was just one of the guards who was responsible for so much cruelty to her and the other people. And she was teaching about forgiveness when she came home from the concentration camp and, in the States. And actually, I don't know if that part was in the States or not. But anyway, she was teaching about it and had to face this man, this guard, face to face and offer that man forgiveness. Incredible opportunity to offer forgiveness. That would be very hard for any of us. So anyway, that's the character trait that we picked for her. So we try to tie it into a really significant thing if we can. And basically we just kind of explain why we picked it and then have the kids go through the Bible and think about endurance or whatever it is and how that can be applied in their lives. So that's pretty neat. And then after that, we have copy work. And each one has a verse that is related to the character traits. So in this case, endurance, and it's in King James or ESV and King James, whichever you choose. We've written it in print. If you want your student to do it in cursive, you can. They would just obviously be looking at it in print, but that's not really a problem. And also, if you're, I love copy work in the sense that I love it when it's super meaningful on something like this. So I'm not all about, hey, let's just practice letters forever and ever and ever and ever, because there's so many great things to do. So I love that we have the opportunity to pair that basically with scripture memory. So even if your kids have amazing handwriting and you've got a 7th, 8th grader and you're thinking, well, they don't really need to practice handwriting, I would say this is more for getting God's word in your heart and memorization of it. And just that writing down is so valuable that it's not necessarily just about how pretty can I make it look on the page. So, okay. And that's what each, again, missionary has in the book. And then we just go on to Gladys next, and hers is virtue. You'll have to read them to find out how they get there. So that's how the study is laid out. And now I want to talk a little bit about how to make it practical for you as a family to help you save money and time, because those are things that we always want as a homeschooler, right? And so 2 things that you should think about. First, the nice thing about doing something like this is that it will, you can do it with multiple children. So you can bring in And this will save you a lot of time. You can bring in everybody under, I say everybody under 8th grade and under, for sure, will love the opportunity to just, as a family, discuss this missionary, and you'll love how that ends up looking in your home. And now you're covering a subject with everybody, and you don't have to teach, individual levels. So that saves you a ton of time. If you're not already doing that on some level, I highly recommend you continue to look for pieces of curriculum that will help you do that so that you're not so stacked against the clock, because it's hard to get all that stuff in. And then, secondly, this is multi-subject, so it saves you money in that sense as well as time. Instead of needing to look for, something that kind of covers language arts, because there's a good bit of reading involved here, and the copywork element of it, and the history, and the Bible, all of that is here in one book. Again, another great way to help your family not have to do so much. It saves time, making it connect and make sense, which is a huge benefit educationally to do, but then it also saves you money. So that's pretty awesome. So that is the basic introduction to Every Nation. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment, let us know. And you can, of course, get this at notconsumed.com, and we'd love to help you with that. Thanks for watching.